it's one thing for you to have an idea,
yes,
and then another thing for you to have all the strategies in place to birth this idea to the benefit of the entire people of Nigeria. But according to recent reports, they indicated that Nigerian government aims to elevate the creative industry's contribution to national GDP to as much as $100 billion by 2030. So I'm wondering what kind of reforms, you've mentioned some, what kind of strategies you're not bringing on board to, you know, not just attract funding, but also contribute to the national GDP growth.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was as a result of that deep dive that we did, looking at these benchmark countries, that we were able to project that Nigeria was able to contribute that $100 billion. We committed to this, and I believe that we can do that and more by closing some of these lacunas that I spoke about, for example, IP, which is completely foundational, and the fact that it wasn't there. You know, this is one area that you can do it. Then you also look at the issue of infrastructure.
For better understanding of our audience, what exactly is IP?
IP means intellectual property. I'm sorry. I've been reading so much about IP. Intellectual property, you know. What we're even doing, we're even going beyond that. Now we're monetizing that IP. We have come up with a framework where, as a creative, you can now use your IP as collateral to access funding. And this is, again, something that we're working with Afrexim Bank with an additional commitment that they've given us to ensure that creatives can now use they can use their creativity, and that IP that will be protected from the intellectual property policy to collateralize and use that as collateral for them to get the funding. So that is one lacuna that you're closing. And then the issue, like I said, of the funding is one, because when you talk about the value, but there's no value if creators in the industry have no ability to create. When they create, the communities are able to give value to their communities.
Absolutely.
Some of the value that is being lost, we're also looking at how we can bring that value back home. Some of the policies that we're also talking about, in addition to the intellectual property policy, is also the cultural policy, which has been seated and has been outdated since 2017. So we have brought out that cultural policy because that really is sort of the constitution, so to speak, of the cultural sector. So we have taken the culture. Go ahead, please.
Okay, interesting. Before I bring in my colleagues in Abuja, I just want you to quickly touch on this $200 million international funding that you mentioned earlier. I'm wondering what the framework looks like, a sustainable framework that would even outlive your term in office. And then tell us how you intend to spread this. What are the sectors within the industry that you're looking at?
Yes, like I said, one of the things that Mr. President said to us very earlier on, and he mandated it, was that everything that we were going to do has to be done in a sustainable manner, has to outlive all of us, right? Not just this current administration, has to outlive for the next generation and the upper generation. And that was why it was important for us to do a proper foundation, lay that in place. One of the ways that you can do that is working with the private sector, which is very key. And we know that in terms of any initiative having a sustainable nature, the way to do it is to work with the private sector. So almost every initiative that we are rolling out is going to be done with the private sector in order to give it that sustainable factor. The framework, we are working now actively with the Afrexim Bank. We already have a framework in place. I don't want to jump the gun by announcing it now. It will be announced next week. How it's going to be spread is we're going to do a proper stakeholder announcement, and the areas of the subsector of the creative industry. It won't be limited to one or two. There are 49 subsectors in the creative industry, and my hope, of course, some will be a little bit more: the music, the music, the film, perhaps the fashion, the animation. But we want to make sure that all 49 subsectors have equal access to